There is a term used in some languages to describe their verbs as perfective and imperfective. In this video, I'm going to explain what the difference is between perfective and perfect. First of all verbs can be broken into two categories, which are tense and aspect. Now the first of those, tense, is very simple. However, aspect is a different aspect of the verb, of time, which one is continuous action, like we have in English, the present progressive or present continuous tense, I am doing, or I was doing. However, in most languages, this is referred to as the imperfect tense. So I was doing and I am doing. And the perfect tense in English is where we add the word have. I have done and I haven't done, or I had done. So in most languages that have both tense and aspect, they're going to combine them together as a perfect and imperfect tense. So the perfect tense actually combines both tense and aspect, whereas perfective and imperfective do not. Now imperfective, you can have, basically it is the same thing as it's an unfinished action, it's ongoing, or it's a repetitive action that happens many times. Like we have in English, I go and do something every day, or I do it regularly. So in some languages of Eastern Europe, like Russian, you're going to have these imperfect tenses describing the actions that you do regularly, or that they're just not finished. So that's imperfective. Now the perfective has to do with the action that is actually completed, but this has nothing to do with the time. They just focus on the completed action. Now, in some languages of East Asia, the tonal languages of Asia, you're also going to find particles in the sentence that indicate whether this verb is perfective or imperfective, whether it's a finished action or an unfinished action. And so normally they just add an extra word, an extra syllable in the sentence. For example, in Chinese, it's le, and in Thai, it's lao. So I think the word might actually be related, but they sound very similar. So you can actually see that when you add this le in the sentence, it makes the verb a perfective. And so in languages like Russian, the perfective can only happen in the past or in the future. So I'm certainly going to do something. You just use the perfective, and you use it in the present tense in Russian. And so that just means that you're certainly going to do it. You're going to finish it. In languages like Chinese, you would actually switch to a different verb. You would use hui, hui verb in front of the hui in front of the verb, which means that you're certainly going to do that. So this actually has a direct correlation with the Russian perfective. Now, in English, we have to use a roundabout way to get there. So because it includes both tense and aspect in the present perfect, in the past perfect, and onwards. So this imperfect also happens in French, Italian, and Spanish. And so this imperfect is normally used with normally used with time words like always and sometimes and things that you used to do. So if you do something over a period of time, in Spanish and the Romance languages, you're going to have something called the preterite. So the preterite is usually something that happened in the past, but it was for a certain amount of time and then it was completed. Now you can also use this with present time. It was completed as of now. You might use the present preterite. So there's all these different kind of verb tenses in languages, and they may not line up perfectly with each other. The other thing to remember is that when you're learning a language like German, even though they have a present perfect and they have a simple past, the usage of these tenses in the language differ quite a bit from English. For example, in English I say, I did it yesterday. In German, it's quite typical to just say, I have done it yesterday, which is not allowed in English. Ich habe es gestern gemacht, or getan. And so in English, you can't use the present perfect, you just have to use the simple past. But German reserves the simple past for other kinds of situations. For example, when you interrupted an action. For example, he called me while I was eating. So that called would be used in the past tense. So it's usually in combination with something else happening in the sentence so that we know that that was a specific past tense action. But most Germans speak using this have done construction. And what's interesting to know about this have done construction is that in most European languages you have two kinds of have dones. And this applies to French, Italian, and German as far as I know. But if an action is a movement verb, an action, a movement, a verb of motion, basically, you're going to be using the be verb instead of the have verb in these complex tenses. Okay, so, and going back to the tonal languages of Asia, you also have this continuing action to indicate that a verb is continuing. So for example, in Thai, you can use gamlang or you can use you. And then in Chinese, you can use zai or zheng zai in front of the verb. That is continuing on in its action. So some languages will use various ways to express the meaning. So what happens when we want to talk about time in the East Asian languages, tonal languages? Well, we have to actually specify the time. So notice how I said in English, I did something yesterday. Well, I actually say the time with the past tense. But if I say I have done it, or I have done it this week, I can leave off the word this week, and I have done it kind of just indicates that it has been completed. Well, in Chinese, I can just say the word le in that sentence. 我做了. And then if I want to say this week, 我这礼拜做了. And if I'm speaking, if I just want to say I did it in the past, I did it yesterday, then I don't need any particle added on there because the yesterday makes it clear. So there is no real past tense in Chinese. So I can say 我昨天做. But you can also say 了. It has been done. It was done as of yesterday. 昨天做了. So, but in a lot of cases, you don't actually need to use that 了 to indicate the completion. So to round up, to summarize here, basically the perfective and imperfective of the Slavic languages of Europe, these indicate only aspect, whereas the perfect and imperfect tenses of Western Europe combine both tense and aspect in their meanings. So as long as you can keep those straight, then you'll be able to use the right tenses when you're learning those languages. Thank you for watching. Hi, this is Michael Campbell, the founder of Glossika. If you love languages as much as I do, then you have to subscribe to our channel, or else you're just missing out.